This is a message to President Trump. So if you really want to cut the head of the snake in terms of the banking power, it's in Basel, Switzerland. And unless you do that, the Mexican cartels are going to continue to be able to operate within the financial system. Tuesday, March 11th, 2025, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Well, I recently interviewed Judy Shelton, who was an advisor to President Trump in his first term. She was also nominated to join the board of the Federal Reserve in 2019. The Senate unfortunately rejected her. And in our interview, she made it known to me and to you, the public, that she thinks the Federal Reserve is out of control and it needs to be brought back to heel, short of course, abolishing the Federal Reserve, which I think, in my opinion, is the best course of action. And what I want to talk about today, though, is a bank that's even more powerful than the Federal Reserve. And also recommend a video that explains that really well. A video that was made about 8 years ago, and I remember it well. So before we go further, just wanted to let you know that the bank I'm going to talk about is this one here, the Tower of Basel, or the Bank for International Settlements, also known as the BIS. And this is a great book. I'm going to talk a little bit about the book, but also about some other topics. So it says here, the shadowy history of the secret bank that runs the world. So there you go. How come nobody knows about this? Well, some people do. And the reason I'm talking about this is because of HSBC. I spoke about HSBC yesterday. The head of the bullion department, precious metals trading, retired, so to speak, last month. Of course, we're seeing all the problems that the Bank of England and the LBMA Association, the London bullion market, is having, delivering gold. And what's it got to do with the BIS? Well, it's got to do with the BIS because the video from 2017 also has to do with the BIS and HSBC. And I'm not saying what's happening right now is related to that, but who knows? But before I start, though, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Miles Franklin, my U.S. affiliated precious metals dealer. You should check out their website. Their details are below in the description. They always have specials. And if you're looking to deal with them, or if you're looking just to speak to them about buying gold and silver, make sure you mention Maneco 64 or Mario. They'll be extra helpful. And here in the UK as well, I'd like to give a shout out to Gold Investments. They've got some specials all the time, and I have promo codes below in the description as well. So could there really be a bank that's more powerful than the Federal Reserve? Well, you bet there is, and it is the Bank for International Settlements. And I even have a playlist for this bank, and I'll put it right here. So I'll give you a little bit of a summary of how this bank came about. Well, it was created under the auspices of the League of Nations in 1930. And of course, the United States did not join the League of Nations. So this Bank for International Settlement was created as the central bank's bank. And it was created by international treaty. And the major countries that were involved were the European countries, the major European powers, and Japan. And they signed a treaty and they created the bank. And believe it or not, JP Morgan, First National City Bank of New York, and First National Bank of Chicago were also part of that treaty. They were major shareholders. And I guess the Fed wasn't involved because the Fed is a hybrid government institution. And as the U.S. hadn't signed or wasn't a member of the League of Nations, it had to be done through the private banks. But now the Federal Reserve is part of the BIS. They are members of the BIS. And what's so important and significant about the BIS? Well, I would say that despite being in Basel, Switzerland, it's a little bit like the Vatican. Like the Vatican is in Italy, but it's not really ruled by Italian law. And the same thing goes for the BIS. It has supranational status in the world. So the central bankers like Jay Powell and others around the world, when they travel to Basel every other month for their bi-monthly meetings, they travel with BIS diplomatic passports, and they can't be stopped by customs or anything. And unless there's a criminal act by the BIS employees in Basel, they don't have to disclose anything to Swiss authorities. All records, documents, everything is like private. They're above the law. They're completely like a country within Switzerland. So why is that so important, that supranational status? Well, because as they are the central bank's banker, whenever the central banks need to do shady deals, they go through the BIS because they are above the law. And did you know the BIS dealt with the Germans and the Allies during World War II? So it financed both sides of the war. And the Norwegian delegation at the Bretton Woods conference wanted to abolish this bank because of that, but John Maynard Keynes, the British representative, vetoed that. So that's how important the BIS is. So what's it got to do with HSBC? And of course, I spoke about HSBC and how the head of the bullion bank department there recently retired. We don't know if that's the real reason why he left. Maybe he resigned with all the troubles that we're seeing in London, with the fact that the Bank of England and the LBMA vaults seem to be having difficulty deliver spot physical gold. It's taking them like anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks. So yeah, I spoke about that yesterday. And then I remembered the video that John Titus, who I've had on the channel from Best Evidence, did back in 2017 called All the Plenary's Men. And here again, I'm going to associate another guy that's in the news right now, aside from LBMA, HSBC. And that's the newly minted Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney. Yes, it's a weird parliamentary system they have there. It's like the UK one. He only has to call a general election now by the 20th of October. So he could do a lot of damage as a prime minister, even though he's not even an MP. He was elected by his party and Trudeau resigned. So what's Mark Carney got to do with HSBC and the BIS? Well, he's got a lot to do with it. And I've got some notes here about John Titus's video, which is about just under an hour, but I highly recommend you watch it because I think it will prove my point that the current administration, they don't just need to bring the Federal Reserve to heel, but they need to make sure that the Federal Reserve is not allied or a member or part of this BIS racket Just like Trump is, people have been saying that he wants to leave NATO or even the UN. The US should leave the BIS as well. So back in 2012, HSBC, believe it or not, even though they admitted its guilt, the bank admitted its guilt, and there were 4 counts of violations. 2 were to do with Bank Secrecy Act. 1 violation was of International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IPA. And the other one, the other law they violated was Trading with the Enemy Act. So basically HSBC in the US got caught dealing with the Mexican drug lords and arms dealers. And surprisingly, the Department of Justice under the Obama administration did not prosecute anyone at HSBC. And this is what John Titus talks about. And the overall summarized reason why this happened is because of the BIS. Because the BIS has this group within it called the FSB, the Financial Stability Board, and Mark Carney was the head of that board from 2010 to 2012. And basically the FSB, they have a list of the too big to fail, the significantly important international financial institutions. And these banks they're given immunity from prosecution anywhere around the world. So the jurisdiction for these banks, it's in Basel and BIS, and the way they got away with it, and you'll see when you watch the video, is that the UK authorities, like the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the head of the Bank of England, and the head of the FSA, told the DOJ, the Fed, and the US Treasury that they couldn't deal with this case, that it was very serious. It could create a financial crisis. It could create collateral damage. And it could bring the whole financial system down, global financial system. Basically, they bullied them into thinking that, but they actually had the legal right to do that because of the BIS and the FSB. And Mark Carney, of course, was right in the middle of this. And I saw recently that President Trump has declared the cartels in Mexico as terrorist organizations. And by the way, HSBC ended up negotiating, not a fine, but a fee that they had to pay the DOJ for doing what they did. And it was $1.92 billion. So for them, that's a drop in the ocean. And I would speculate that not just at HSBC, but many other of these too big to fail banks are still at it, are still doing these nefarious activities. So this is a message to President Trump. So if you really want to cut the head of the snake in terms of the banking power, it's in Basel, Switzerland. And unless you do that, the Mexican cartels are going to continue to be able to operate within the financial system, because I'm not convinced HSBC has stopped dealing with these people, because they got away with it, because the Obama administration's DOJ did not indict one single person from HSBC. All they got is they didn't even get a slap. They negotiated their own fine. Can you imagine if you if you got fined for a speeding ticket or something, and you could sit down with the police and negotiate what you pay. The other point John Titus makes is that these banks, according to John, they are above the law. He compares the case of HSBC to President Nixon. Even President Nixon didn't get full immunity when he tried to hand only certain tapes in relationship to Watergate. The Supreme Court found that he had to hand in everything. So HSBC and these banks are more powerful than the president. So the conclusion that John Titus comes to is that, they've got huge power, these banks that are regulated by Basel, the FSB. And in his opinion, it's a war. It's a war against the American people. It's a war against the people of the UK, because these banks operate worldwide. So what can we do to try to fight this? Well, I'm trying to do it here by letting you know about it so that you can talk to people about it. I know it's a topic that very few people get into, but it's very close to the Federal Reserve and central banking. If you tell people this is the Fed's bank, and they are totally, how can I say, immune from anything. They are like the Vatican of finance, and no one can touch anything they do. And the other thing I would say is recommend this book to your friends and read it yourself as well. There's loads of great stories and information here. There's even a story of when the Germans invaded Czechoslovakia in 1938, just before World War I. And the BIS and the Bank of England, and the Bank of England is really close to the BIS, they allowed the Germans to steal the gold that Czechoslovakia had left with their banker, the BIS. And that gold was at the BIS's account in the Bank of England. So that's how much you can trust these banks. You shouldn't trust these banks. So there you go. Hopefully Judy Shelton will be listening to this video, and maybe she could bring this up to President Trump, that they need to look at the BIS, that yes, bring the Fed to heel, but if you don't separate the Fed from the BIS and this FSB, nothing really will be solved, and it's going to be very hard for America to gain back its sovereignty. So with that, I'm going to wish you all a very good day. Take care. Bye.